He was just a small-town mechanic with grease-stained hands and a heart twice the size of his bank account. She was the heiress to America's largest automotive empire, stranded on a forgotten stretch of highway as rain poured down like tears. From heaven, their worlds were never meant to collide, but sometimes fate has a blueprint all its own. What began as a simple roadside rescue would become the most unexpected journey of second chances, unspoken truths, and the kind of love that rebuilds broken engines and wounded souls alike. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The rain hammered against the hood of the rusted pickup truck as Mike Reynolds squinted through the windshield wipers, fighting a losing battle against the downpour. Lightning flashed, illuminating the Miller's Auto Repair logo faded on the left driver's side door, a remnant of better days when his father still ran the place. Thunder followed, and Mike's 10-year-old daughter Lily pressed closer to him in the cab, clutching her worn backpack to her chest. "Almost home, kiddo," Mike said, forcing a reassuring smile. The evening trip to pick up parts from the neighboring town had taken longer than expected, and the storm had caught them halfway back to Riverbrook. His shoulders ached from a 12-hour workday, but Lily's school project needed that science. Fair display board and promises to his daughter were the one currency he refused to devalue. Lily nodded, her eyes wide with each flash of lightning. She had her mother's eyes, warm amber flecked with gold, a daily reminder of what Mike had lost 3 years ago when cancer claimed Sarah faster than anyone could have prepared for. Medical bills had nearly sunk the garage, but Mike had managed to keep both the business and their small family afloat, even if just barely. "Dad, look!" Lily suddenly pressed her finger against the passenger window, her breath fogging the glass. "There's someone out there!" Mike slowed the truck, peering through the curtain of rain. At first, he saw nothing but darkness and the glistening asphalt. Then another flash of lightning revealed the silhouette. A woman standing beside a sleek, black luxury sedan, with hazard lights blinking weakly against the storm. She wore what appeared to be a tailored business suit, soaked through as she hunched over an open hood. "Should we stop?" Lily asked, though they both already knew the answer. Mike checked his watch. It was late, and Lily needed to get home. But he could already hear his father's voice in his head. "You never leave someone stranded on the road, son. That's not what Reynolds men do." He eased the truck onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath. The tires. 10 minutes, tops, he promised Lily, reaching behind the seat for his rain jacket. "Then we're heading straight home for hot chocolate." The rain was even heavier outside the truck. Mike pulled his jacket tighter and jogged toward the stranded vehicle, immediately recognizing it as a Hemsworth executive. The flagship luxury sedan of Hemsworth Motors, price tag easily north of $100,000. Definitely not typical Riverbrook transportation. The woman didn't notice him approach, still leaning under the hood, with a cell phone flashlight clutched between her teeth and her dark hair plastered against her neck. Her jacket lay discarded on the driver's seat, likely sacrificed in her determination to diagnose the problem. "Need a hand?" Mike called over the storm. She startled, nearly dropping her phone as she turned. In the harsh glare of his truck's headlights, Mike caught his first real glimpse of her face, striking, with high cheekbones and eyes that even in this dim light radiated intelligence and determination. She seemed oddly familiar, though he couldn't place why. "Thank goodness," she said, relief evident in her voice as she removed the phone from her mouth. "I've been stranded for nearly an hour. No cell service out here." Mike nodded. Even in good weather, this stretch of highway was notorious for dead zones. "Mind if I take a look?" "Please." She gestured toward the engine, stepping aside. "I know the fundamentals, but this is beyond my expertise." Mike leaned under the hood, his experienced hands moving methodically over the engine components. Despite the rain and darkness, his fingers quickly identified the problem: a blown water pump and a timing belt that had snapped as a result. Not something he could fix on the roadside, especially in this weather. "I'm sorry to say, you won't be getting this beauty running tonight." He straightened up, rain streaming down his face. Water pump's shot, and that's taken the timing belt with it. The woman's shoulders slumped slightly before she composed herself. "I was afraid of that. I heard the whining before it died, but I thought I could make it to the next town." "Riverbrook's about 15 minutes up the road," Mike offered. "I can give you a lift. My garage is there, Miller's Auto Repair. I can tow your car in tomorrow morning once the storm passes." She hesitated, glancing from Mike to his truck, where Lily's curious face peered through the window. "I'm Mike Reynolds," he added, realizing he hadn't introduced himself. "That's my daughter Lily. We were just heading home from getting her school project supplies." "Catherine," she replied after a moment, offering her hand. "Catherine Wright." Mike shook it, noting both the firmness of her grip and the softness of her skin, hands that likely spent more time signing documents than turning wrenches. "Well, Catherine, I promise we're not axe murderers, just a mechanic and a fifth grader who could both use a warm dinner. You're welcome to join us while we figure out your car situation." A small smile finally broke through her professional veneer. "I appreciate that. Let me grab my bag." As Catherine collected her belongings from the sedan, Mike returned to the truck to make room. "Scoot to the middle, Lil," he said. "We've got a passenger." Lily eagerly slid over, her earlier fear of the storm forgotten in the excitement of meeting someone new. "Is she coming home with us? Can she have hot chocolate too?" "Yes to both," Mike smiled, grateful for his daughter's open heart. "Her car's broken down pretty bad." When Catherine slid into the passenger seat, clutching a leather briefcase and a small overnight bag, Lily immediately extended her hand with all the seriousness a 10-year-old could muster. "I'm Lily Reynolds. I'm doing my science project on alternative fuel sources because Dad says gasoline won't last forever." Catherine seemed momentarily taken aback by the formal introduction before her expression softened. She shook Lily's hand with equal gravity. "Very pleased to meet you, Lily. That sounds like an important project." As Mike pulled back onto the highway, he caught Catherine looking around the truck's worn interior, the cracked dashboard, the coffee-stained cup holders, the stack of invoices tucked beside the gear shift. He felt a flash of self-consciousness before pushing it aside. This was his life, honest if not glamorous. "So what brings you out this way, Catherine?" he asked, keeping his eyes on the rain-slicked road. "We don't see many Hemsworth executives in Riverbrook." "Business trip gone slightly awry," she replied, her tone measured. "I was supposed to be in Westfield for a meeting, but my GPS suggested this route as a shortcut when I heard there was construction on the main highway." "Technology," Mike chuckled. "Great, until it leads you straight into trouble." "Story of my life lately," Catherine murmured, almost too quietly to hear. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness as they drove, illuminating the "Welcome to Riverbrook" sign with its peeling paint and faded lettering. Population 8,742, though Mike suspected that number hadn't been updated in years as younger. Folks continued their exodus to bigger cities and better opportunities. "Home sweet home," Mike said, turning onto Main Street with its modest string of shops now dark for the evening. "Not much to look at compared to where you're probably from, but it has its charms." Catherine studied the storefronts as they passed. Donovan's Hardware, May's Diner, Riverbrook Pharmacy, and finally Miller's Auto Repair on the corner of Pine and Main, its neon sign flickering bravely against the storm. "My garage is there," Mike pointed, Been in the family for 3 generations. My grandfather started it after W.W., then my dad took over, and now it's my turn at the wheel, so to speak. Family businesses are increasingly rare these days, Catherine commented, something unreadable crossing her features. There's value in that kind of legacy. Mike turned down a residential street lined with modest homes, most built in the 1960s, when the local paper mill had provided steady employment. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We're just up here, he said, pulling into the driveway of a small 2-story craftsman with slightly chipped blue paint and a porch swing swaying in the wind. Once inside, Mike set about making them all comfortable, finding Catherine a pair of Sarah's old sweatpants and a t-shirt to change into while her clothes dried, showing her to the bathroom and then heading to the kitchen to prepare the promised hot chocolate. Lily immediately settled at the dining table with her school supplies, determined to begin her project despite the late hour. "Can I help with anything?" Catherine asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway. The borrowed clothes hung loose on her frame, and without her tailored suit, she looked younger, less guarded. She tied her damp hair back in a simple ponytail and wiped away whatever makeup she'd been wearing. It was then that recognition finally clicked in Mike's mind. "You know," he said, stirring the chocolate warming on the stove, "you look an awful lot like Elizabeth Hemsworth." Catherine froze, her expression carefully neutral. "I get that sometimes. My dad was obsessed with American automotive history. Had books all over the place when I was growing up. Elizabeth Hemsworth took over Hemsworth Motors after her father died, right? First woman to run a major US car manufacturer." Mike poured the hot chocolate into 3 mugs. Dad always admired her for that. "She faced significant challenges," Catherine said quietly, accepting the mug Mike offered. "The industry wasn't exactly welcoming to female leadership in those days." "Some things change too slowly," Mike agreed, nodding toward the living room where framed photos adorned the mantel. "My late wife, Sarah, was the first female mechanic in Riverbrook. Folks around here weren't too keen on having a woman work on their engines at first. But she was the best damn mechanic I ever knew, pardon my language." A small smile touched Catherine's lips. "No offense taken." Mike carried the remaining mugs to the dining room, setting one beside Lily, who was already deep in concentration. Colored pencils scattered across the table. "Here you go, Professor Reynolds, fuel for that brilliant brain." "Thanks, Dad," Lily mumbled without looking up. Catherine sat across from Lily, watching as the girl sketched what appeared to be a hydrogen fuel cell with remarkable accuracy for her age. "That's quite impressive," she commented. "Where did you learn about alternative energy?" Lily glanced up, surprised at the interest. "Dad has all these old mechanical engineering textbooks from when he was going to college. Plus, we watch a lot of documentaries." She hesitated before adding proudly, "He was going to design cars before Grandpa got sick." Mike felt his cheeks warm. "That was a lifetime ago, Lil." "But you still have all the drawings in your workshop," Lily persisted. "The ones with the super-efficient engines that run on almost nothing." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly as she looked at Mike with new interest. "You're an engineer." "Almost was," Mike corrected, taking a seat at the table. "Did 3 years at State before my dad's heart attack. Came home to help with the garage temporarily and, well," he gestured vaguely around them. "Life had other plans." "Dad fixes everything," Lily declared with absolute confidence. "Mrs. Gonzalez's car that no one else could figure out, Principal Harmon's antique tractor, even old Mr. Wilson's ridiculous lawn mower that exploded twice." "I think you're overselling my abilities a bit there, kiddo," Mike laughed, though Catherine could clearly see the pride in his eyes at his daughter's faith in him. As the evening progressed, Catherine found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did. There was something disarmingly authentic about the Reynolds household, from the mismatched furniture that somehow worked together, to the wall of growth marks tracking Lily's height through the years, to the way Mike listened to his daughter with genuine interest as she explained her project ideas. When Lily finally began to yawn, Mike gently insisted it was bedtime. "But we have a guest," she protested weakly, even as she rubbed her eyes. "And she'll still be here in the morning," Mike assured her. "Your car's not going anywhere tonight," he added to Catherine. After Lily had said her goodnights and headed upstairs, an awkward silence settled between the two adults. Catherine rose, carrying her empty mug to the kitchen sink. "Thank you for this," she said, her back to Mike as she rinsed the cup. "Most people wouldn't take in a stranded stranger. Most strangers don't look like they need the help as badly as you did," Mike replied, joining her at the sink with his own mug. "No offense, but you seem pretty worn out even before your car broke down." Catherine's shoulders tensed slightly before she sighed. "That obvious, huh?" "Occupational hazard," Mike shrugged. "You spend enough time diagnosing machines, you start noticing when people aren't running right either." A small laugh escaped her. "That's surprisingly insightful." "Don't sound so shocked," he grinned, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Even small-town mechanics have their moments." Catherine turned to face him, leaning against the counter. In the warm kitchen light, Mike could see faint shadows beneath her eyes and lines of stress at the corners of her mouth that spoke of burdens he couldn't begin to guess. "The thing is," Catherine began slowly as if weighing her words, "I wasn't actually headed to a regular business meeting. I was running away." Mike blinked, surprised by the confession. "From what?" "From everything," she said quietly. "From expectations and legacy and board meetings and the weight of thousands of people's livelihoods on my shoulders. Just for a few days, I just needed to breathe." Understanding dawned on Mike's face. "You're not just someone who looks like Elizabeth Hemsworth's daughter, are you?" Catherine hesitated before shaking her head. "My real name is Catherine Hemsworth. I'm the CEO of Hemsworth Motors." She smiled faintly at his startled expression. "And tomorrow morning, about 100 people are going to be frantically searching for me when I don't show up to the quarterly board meeting." Mike let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned. I just made the CEO of Hemsworth Motors instant hot chocolate from a box. And it was the best I've had in years," she replied with unexpected warmth. Mike studied her face, seeing now what he'd missed before. The resemblance to the company portraits he'd seen in automotive magazines, though those images had captured none of the humanity he saw before him now. "Your secret's safe with me," he said finally. "But you might want to make a call in the morning before someone reports you missing. My landline works even when the cell towers don't." Catherine nodded gratefully. "I should. Thank you." Mike showed her to the guest room, a small but clean space that had once been his home office before he'd moved his drafting table to the garage. "It's not exactly the luxury accommodations you're probably used to," he apologized, finding clean sheets in the hallway closet. "It's perfect," Catherine assured him, taking the linens. Their fingers brushed briefly in the exchange, and for a moment neither moved. Then Mike stepped back, clearing his throat. "Bathroom's first door on the right. Towels in the cabinet under the sink. Lily and I are early risers, but sleep as long as you need." "Mike," Catherine called softly as he turned to leave. "Why are you being so kind to me? You don't even know me." He paused in the doorway, considering her question. "My dad always said you can tell a lot about people by how they act when their car breaks down. Some get angry, some get helpless, some try to take charge even when they don't know what they're doing." "And what did I do?" she asked. "You were under the hood in a thunderstorm, trying to fix it yourself instead of waiting for rescue." He smiled. "That says something good about a person, fancy car or not." After Mike left, Catherine sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the modest room with its faded wallpaper and carefully mended curtains. On the nightstand stood a small, Framed photograph of a younger Mike with a pretty woman with amber eyes, clearly Lily's mother. They were both laughing, their faces alight with joy and possibility. Catherine's thoughts drifted to her own life. The penthouse apartment where no one waited for her, the executive office with its impressive view and suffocating silence, the endless meetings where she fought to be heard in rooms full of men who'd known her grandfather. For 3 years since taking over as CEO, she'd thrown herself into proving she deserved the position, that it wasn't just her last name that qualified her. And yet, in all that time, she couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed like the couple in that photograph, couldn't remember when she'd last felt genuine connection rather than strategic alliance. The rain continued to beat against the windows as Catherine prepared for bed, but for the first time in longer than she could remember, the chaos outside didn't mirror the turmoil within. Instead, in this stranger's home, she felt an unexpected calm, as if the breakdown that had seemed like the final straw in an impossible day had somehow led her exactly where she needed to be. Morning came with gentle persistence, sunlight filtering through the guest room curtains and the distant sounds of kitchenware and quiet conversation downstairs. Catherine woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings before the previous night's events came rushing back. Her hand instinctively reached for her phone before she remembered no service here, and her battery had died before. She'd gone to bed. The wall clock read 7:15 a.m. By now, her assistant would be panicking, the board members assembling with their disapproving frowns, and her COO likely already crafting the narrative to capitalize on her absence. Catherine should have felt anxious, desperate to regain control of the situation. Instead, she found herself lingering, listening to the domestic symphony below, the rhythmic scrape of a spatula against a pan, Lily's animated voice asking questions, Mike's deeper tones responding with patience. She dressed in her now dry business clothes, though they felt strangely formal, almost like a costume after the comfortable borrowed clothes. When she finally descended the stairs, she found Mike at the stove flipping pancakes while Lily set the table, both still in pajamas and slippers. "Morning," Mike called without turning around. "Hope you like blueberry pancakes. They're Lily's favorite, and Friday is officially pancake day in the Reynolds household." "I haven't had pancakes in years," Catherine admitted, accepting the mug of coffee Lily proudly offered her. "But they smell amazing. Dad makes them from scratch," Lily informed her solemnly. "Not from a box, that's very important." "Very important indeed," Catherine agreed with equal seriousness, earning a beaming smile from the girl. Breakfast was a casual, unhurried affair, so different from Catherine's usual routine of protein shakes consumed while reviewing early market reports. Mike and Lily operated with the easy synchronicity of a family who truly enjoyed each other's company, their inside jokes and shared references creating an atmosphere that was both foreign and strangely inviting to Catherine. "So," Mike said eventually, refilling Catherine's coffee cup, "what's the plan? I can head to the garage after breakfast and get the tow truck ready for your car." Catherine hesitated. "Actually, I was wondering if I could use your landline. First, I should let my office know I'm all right." "Of course," Mike pointed to the phone mounted on the kitchen wall. Old school but reliable. When Catherine dialed her assistant's number, the young man answered on the first ring, his voice tight with stress. "Mark Jenkins speaking." "Mark, it's Catherine," she said. "Ms. Hemsworth." Relief flooded his voice. "Where are you? The board is assembled and Mr. Davenport is suggesting we file a missing persons report. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she assured him, feeling a twinge of guilt at the genuine concern in his voice. "My car broke down during the storm last night in a cell service dead zone. I'm in a town called Riverbrook, getting it repaired." "Riverbrook?" He sounded confused. "That's nowhere near Westfield. The meeting—" "I won't make it back in time," Catherine interrupted. making a sudden decision. Please inform the board that I've been delayed due to vehicle troubles and will be unreachable for potentially 48 hours. 48 hours, Mark sounded alarmed. But the quarterly projections, the new model announcements, will have to wait, Catherine finished firmly. Charles can handle the initial presentations. I have full confidence in him. But, Mark, she softened her tone, I need you to trust me on this. I'll explain everything when I return. After a moment of stunned silence, her assistant reluctantly agreed. Yes, Ms. Hemsworth, I'll inform the board. When Catherine hung up, she found Mike watching her with a raised eyebrow. 48 hours, huh? Your car must be in worse shape than I thought. A faint blush colored Catherine's cheeks. Is that a problem? I mean, can it actually be fixed in that time frame? Mike leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Water pump replacement on a Hemsworth executive? Under normal circumstances, I'd have to order the part, which could take a couple of days anyway. He studied her face. But something tells me this isn't really about the car. Catherine met his gaze directly. Maybe I just need a little more time away before heading back. To breathe? He asked, echoing her words from the night before. She nodded. Exactly. Mike considered this for a moment before nodding. Well, as it happens, Riverbrook is an excellent place for breathing. And if anyone asks, that water pump was in terrible shape. Possibly the worst I've ever seen. A genuine smile spread across Catherine's face, reaching her eyes for perhaps the first time since they'd met. Thank you, Mike. Lily, who had been listening to this exchange with undisguised interest, suddenly brightened. Does this mean Ms. Catherine can come to my science fair tomorrow? It's at the school gym at 10 a.m. and Dad promised he'd be there, but sometimes emergency tows come in and he has to work. Mike gave his daughter a look that was both exasperated and fond. Lily, Ms. Hemsworth probably doesn't want to spend her Saturday at an elementary school science fair. But Catherine surprised him by turning to Lily with interest. Alternative fuel sources, right? I'd love to see your project, if your dad doesn't mind the company, that is. Mike's expression softened as he looked between his daughter's hopeful face and Catherine's unexpectedly genuine offer. I think we could manage that. As they cleared the breakfast dishes together, Catherine insisting on helping despite Mike's protests, something shifted in the atmosphere between them. What had begun as an act of roadside kindness was evolving into something neither of them had anticipated, a connection that bridged their vastly different worlds through simple human understanding. Later that morning, they drove to Miller's Auto Repair in Mike's pickup, Lily chattering excitedly from the middle seat about the exhibits she expected to see at the science fair. The garage was a modest building with 3 service bays, its weathered sign bearing the same logo as Mike's truck. A small office with cloudy windows stood to one side, and parts in various states of refurbishment lined the walls. It's not much, Mike said as he parked, suddenly aware of how the place might look through Catherine's eyes, but it does the job. It has character, Catherine replied, and Mike was surprised to hear genuine appreciation in her voice rather than polite condescension. Places like this are the backbone of American auto care. Inside, the familiar scents of motor oil, rubber and metal greeted them. Mike flipped on the lights and moved confidently through the space, checking messages on the ancient answering machine and reviewing the work orders clipped to the wall. Lily immediately settled into what was clearly her usual spot, a small desk in the corner of the office with well-worn children's books and art supplies. I'll get the tow truck ready, Mike said, grabbing a set of keys from a hook by the door. Should take about 30 minutes round trip to retrieve your car. You're welcome to wait here with Lily. Catherine nodded, but as Mike turned to leave, she found herself asking, could I come with you? I'd like to see the towing process, if that's all right. Mike seemed surprised by the request, but shrugged. Sure, if you want. Lily, You good here for a bit? Mrs. Donovan will be opening the hardware store next door if you need anything. I'm good, Lily confirmed, already absorbed in drawing what appeared to be rocket designs. I'll work on my backup project ideas. The tow truck was older than Mike's pickup, but meticulously maintained. As they drove back toward the stretch of highway where Catherine's car had broken down, she found herself studying Mike's profile. The concentration in his eyes as he drove, the capable hands on the wheel, the lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of both laughter and worry. "Can I ask you something?" she ventured after a few minutes of comfortable silence. "Shoot," Mike replied, eyes still on the road. "You mentioned you were studying engineering before you came back to take over the garage. Do you ever regret it? Not finishing, I mean." Mike considered the question, his expression thoughtful rather than defensive. "Sometimes," he admitted, "especially when I see new engine designs or innovations that I once dreamed of creating myself." He glanced at her briefly. "But regrets, a complicated thing. Would I have met Sarah if I'd stayed at university? Would I have Lily? Those aren't trades I'd ever want to make." Catherine nodded, understanding more than he knew. Her own path to the CEO position had been paved with sacrifices. Relationships ended because work always came first. Friendships that faded through neglect. The family she'd never started because there was always another quarter, another model, launch, another crisis to manage. "What about you?" Mike asked unexpectedly. "Any regrets in the world of automotive empires?" Catherine laughed softly. "Too many to count some days." She paused, surprised by her own willingness to share. "I never actually wanted to run Hemsworth Motors, you know. Not originally." "No?" Mike raised an eyebrow. "What did you want?" "I wanted to design," she said quietly. "Like you, I have a degree in industrial design that I've never really used. My grandfather insisted I get an MBA instead, learn the business side. Anyone can draw pretty cars, he used to say, but only a Hemsworth can run Hemsworth Motors." Mike whistled low. "That's some pressure." "It was his dream, not mine," Catherine continued, the words flowing more easily than she expected. "But when my father died unexpectedly 6 years ago, and then my grandfather 3 years after that, there wasn't really a choice. The board was already circling, looking to break the family's control of the company." They arrived at Catherine's stranded vehicle, still sitting forlornly on the shoulder where they'd left it. Mike worked efficiently to secure it to the tow truck, explaining each step of the process to Catherine, who watched with genuine interest. "You know," Mike said as he finished locking down the luxury sedan, "for someone who owns a car company, you seem pretty unfamiliar with the nuts and bolts of it all." Catherine smiled ruefully. "That's the irony, isn't it? I spend my days in boardrooms talking about production numbers and profit margins. I barely have time to drive the cars we make, let alone understand how they're put together anymore." On the drive back to the garage, with her car securely fastened behind them, Catherine found herself continuing to share things she rarely discussed with anyone: the challenges of being a female CEO in a male-dominated industry, the constant pressure to honor her family's legacy while modernizing the company, the loneliness of leadership. Mike listened without judgment, occasionally offering insights from his own experiences as a small business owner that were surprisingly relevant despite the vast difference in scale. There was a groundedness to his perspective that Catherine found refreshing after years of consultants and yes men. Back at the garage, Mike maneuvered the tow truck into position and began the process of unloading Catherine's sedan into one of the service bays. Catherine watched, admiring the quiet competence with which he worked. When the car was settled, Mike popped the hood and beckoned her over. "Want to see what went wrong?" he offered. Catherine joined him at the front of the car, peering into the engine compartment. Mike pointed to a damaged component. There's your water pump. See how the bearing has completely seized? That caused the belt to snap, which then prevented the engine from maintaining proper timing, Catherine finished, surprising him, resulting in a full breakdown rather than just overheating. Mike looked at her with new respect. You do know your stuff. Earn some things you never forget, she replied with a small smile. My grandfather used to make me work in the factory during summer breaks, said I couldn't design cars if I didn't understand how they were built. Smart man, Mike commented, reaching for a tool from the nearby workbench. He was, Catherine agreed, a hint of sadness in her voice. Though I'm not sure he'd recognize the company today. Everything's so focused on quarterly profits and shareholder value. The craftsmanship, the innovation he valued. Sometimes I fear we're losing that in the race to please Wall Street. Mike nodded sympathetically as he began the process of removing the damaged components. That's the story of American manufacturing, in a nutshell, isn't it? My dad used to say cars had souls, now they have computers. Why can't they have both? Catherine asked, leaning against the workbench. That's what I've been trying to push for. Technology that enhances the driving experience without replacing the connection between driver and machine. Sounds like something I'd want to drive, Mike said, glancing up at her with a smile that created an unexpected warmth in Catherine's chest. As Mike continued working, Catherine found herself drawn into the process, eventually rolling up her sleeves and holding tools, asking questions that revealed her dormant knowledge of automotive mechanics. She'd forgotten the simple satisfaction of working with her hands, of solving tangible problems rather than navigating corporate politics. When Lily returned from school that afternoon, she found them both bent over the engine, engaged in animated discussion about the merits of different cooling system designs. Catherine's tailored blouse now had a smudge of grease on one sleeve, and her carefully styled hair had been pulled back into a practical ponytail. Are you fixing it together? Lily asked, dropping her backpack by the office door. Mike straightened, rubbing the back of his neck. Ms. Hemsworth knows more about cars than she let on last night. Just theory, Catherine demurred. Your dad is doing all the real work. Lily looked between them, a thoughtful expression on her young face. Dad says the best teams have people who know the theory and people who know the practice. Mike and Catherine exchanged a glance, something unspoken passing between them. Your dad's a wise man, Catherine said softly. As the afternoon light began to fade, painting the garage in warm golden hues, Mike finally stepped back from the car, wiping his hands on a shop rag. That's all I can do today. The new water pump won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. No rush, Catherine said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. The thought of returning to her real life, to board meetings and shareholder calls and endless emails, felt increasingly unappealing compared to another day in this small town with its straightforward problems and genuine people. That evening, Catherine insisted on cooking dinner to repay their hospitality. Though the Reynolds kitchen was modestly equipped compared to her gourmet setup at home, she managed to create a simple but delicious pasta dish that had both Mike and Lily asking for seconds. Where did you learn to cook like this? Mike asked, twirling linguine around his fork. My mother, Catherine replied, a fond smile softening her features. She believed everyone should know how to make at least one meal that could comfort someone after a hard day. Our mom believed that too, Lily said quietly. Dad says she made the best chicken soup in 3 counties. Mike reached over to squeeze his daughter's hand. That she did, kiddo. Catherine felt a pang of empathy, recognizing the gentle sadness that occasionally clouded their interactions, the shared loss that had shaped their tight bond. It made her think of her own parents, both gone too soon, and how their absence had left her adrift until duty had provided an anchor, however heavy. After dinner, as they sat on the porch, watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. Mike brought out a sketchbook that Lily had insisted he show their guest. "It's nothing fancy," he said, looking somewhat embarrassed as he handed it to Catherine. "Just ideas I play around with sometimes." Catherine flipped through the final pages of Mike's sketchbook, her professional eye recognizing the true innovation in his designs. One particular sketch caught her attention, an elegantly simple modification to traditional fuel injection systems that could potentially increase efficiency by 15% while reducing emissions. "Mike," she said quietly, tapping the page, "have you ever tried to patent any of these?" He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck in that now familiar gesture of modesty. "Patents cost money I don't have. Besides, who'd take a small-town mechanic's ideas seriously?" "I would," Catherine said, her voice carrying an unexpected intensity that made both Mike and Lily look at her with surprise. She cleared her throat. "I mean, these are genuinely thoughtful designs, particularly this fuel injection modification. It's elegant in its simplicity." Mike studied her face for a moment, as if trying to determine if she was merely being polite. "Thanks," he finally said. "That's actually my favorite. Been tinkering with the concept for about 3 years." "Have you built a prototype?" Catherine asked, her mind already calculating the potential applications across Hemsworth's lineup. "Parts of it," Mike admitted. "I've adapted elements for some of my customers' vehicles, mostly older models where I can modify without dealing with proprietary computer systems. The results have been promising." Catherine's excitement was genuine. "That's incredible, Mike. Ideas like this, practical, implementable innovations that don't require complete retooling of production lines, they're exactly what the industry needs." Lily, who had been listening intently, suddenly piped up. "Dad's workshop in the basement has all the test engines. He works on them after I go to bed." Mike gave his daughter a mock stern look. "And how would you know that? Miss should be sleeping." Lily grinned unrepentantly. "The house makes different noises when you're working late, and sometimes I get thirsty." Catherine laughed, the sound surprising her with its ease. When was the last time she had genuinely laughed like this? "Would you show me your workshop? I mean, I'd love to see the practical applications." Mike hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Sure, if you're really interested. It's nothing fancy, just an old basement I've converted, but I'm very interested," Catherine assured him. After Lily was finally tucked into bed with protests that she wasn't tired yet, contradicted by her heavy eyelids, Mike led Catherine down narrow wooden stairs to the basement. The space was low-ceilinged, but surprisingly well organized, with fluorescent lights illuminating a workshop that spoke of passion and ingenuity despite limited resources. A partially disassembled engine sat on a sturdy workbench surrounded by precision tools carefully arranged on pegboards. Detailed technical diagrams covered one wall, while carefully labeled bins of components lined another. In the corner, a modest computer setup displayed 3D modeling software that Catherine recognized as an older version of what her company's engineers used. "This is where the magic happens, such as it is," Mike said, flipping on additional lights. "Not exactly the R&D department at Hemsworth Motors, but it serves the purpose." Catherine moved through the space, taking it all in with genuine appreciation. "Don't sell yourself short. Some of the best innovations in automotive history came from workshops just like this." She ran her fingers along the edge of the workbench. "My grandfather started Hemsworth Motors in a converted barn with less equipment than you have here." Mike watched her as she examined his setup, finding himself drawn to the way her eyes lit up when she spotted something that interested her. There was a passion there that contradicted the polished corporate image she'd first presented. "Here," he said, moving to the workbench. "This is the prototype for the fuel injection system you were asking about." He picked up what looked like a modified fuel rail with custom injectors. "I've been experimenting with atomization patterns to create more complete combustion without increasing pressure requirements." Catherine took the component, examining it with skilled hands that clearly knew their way around engine parts. "The design is elegant," she murmured. "You're using standard connections, but completely reimagining the internal geometry." "Exactly," Mike nodded, surprised and pleased by her technical understanding. "Most aftermarket systems focus on increasing pressure, which just wastes fuel. This is about optimization, making every drop count." "May I?" Catherine gestured to the partially disassembled engine. "Be my guest." For the next hour, they forgot about their different worlds as they delved into the technical aspects of Mike's designs, Catherine asking insightful questions, Mike explaining his thought process and the limitations he'd encountered. They moved around each other with increasing comfort, finishing each other's sentences and building on each other's ideas in a way that felt surprisingly natural. "The problem is testing," Mike explained as they leaned over the engine together. "I can verify the concept works on these older engines, but modern vehicles with their integrated computer systems are another matter entirely. Without access to proprietary software and testing facilities, not to mention emission certification would be a regulatory nightmare for an individual," Catherine added, understanding the barriers all too well. "Exactly," Mike sighed. "So they remain workshop projects rather than real-world solutions." Catherine was quiet for a moment, thinking, what if you had access to those resources? The testing facilities, the regulatory support, the software engineers? Mike gave a short laugh. "Well, sure, and what if I had $1 million and a unicorn that runs on rainbows? Some things are just out of reach for guys like me." "Maybe not," Catherine said softly, more to herself than to him. Mike looked at her curiously, but she quickly changed the subject, asking about another design she'd noticed in his sketchbook. As they continued talking, Catherine found herself increasingly impressed, not just by Mike's technical knowledge, but by his practical approach to innovation. He wasn't interested in flashy technology for its own sake, but in meaningful improvements that would make vehicles more reliable, efficient, and accessible. It was approaching midnight when they finally emerged from the basement, both slightly disheveled and covered in the fine grime that comes from handling engine components, but energized by their conversation. "I haven't talked shop like that in years," Catherine admitted as they reached the main floor. "Most of my technical discussions now involve PowerPoint presentations and market viability reports rather than actual engineering." "Do you miss it?" Mike asked, his voice quiet in the sleeping house. "The hands-on part, I mean." Catherine nodded without hesitation. "More than I realized until tonight." She looked down at her grease-stained hands with a small smile. "There's something satisfying about understanding how things work, about solving tangible problems rather than just navigating corporate politics." Mike studied her face in the dim hallway light. "You're not what I expected, Catherine Hemsworth." "Wait, what did you expect?" she asked, curious rather than defensive. He considered this. "I don't know, someone more. Corporate, disconnected, privileged," she supplied with a wry smile. "Maybe," he admitted, "but you're more real than that. You know your stuff, you're not afraid to get your hands dirty, and you actually listen when people talk." "High praise from a Reynolds man," Catherine replied, her tone light but her eyes conveying that his words meant something to her. They stood there for a moment, the silence between them comfortable, yet charged with something neither was quite ready to name. Finally, Mike cleared his throat. "We should probably get some sleep. Lily's science fair is at 10 tomorrow, and she'll be up at the crack of dawn, making sure her project is perfect." "Of course," Catherine nodded. "Thank you for showing me your workshop. It was illuminating. As Catherine readied for bed in the guest room, she found herself thinking not about the board meeting she was missing or the emails undoubtedly piling up, but about the possibilities in Mike's designs and the genuine passion in his eyes as he'd explained them. For the first time in years, she felt reconnected to what had drawn her to the automotive industry in the first place. Not the business of selling cars, but the art and science of creating them. Morning arrived with the promised early awakening. As Lily bounced excitedly through the house, preparing for her big presentation, Catherine joined them for breakfast, offering to help wherever she could, finding herself easily incorporated into their morning routine. "Are you nervous?" Catherine asked Lily as they loaded her project materials into Mike's truck. "A little," Lily admitted, "but Dad says a little nervous is good. It means you care about doing your best." "Your dad is very wise," Catherine smiled, helping to secure a poster board that threatened to slip. Mike watched them from the porch, struck by how naturally Catherine interacted with his daughter. There was no condescension, no awkward attempts to seem interested in a child's concerns. She listened to Lily with genuine attention, respecting her ideas and encouraging her thoughts in a way that seemed instinctive rather than calculated. The elementary school gymnasium was already buzzing with activity when they arrived. Rows of tables had been set up, each hosting a different student project with varying degrees of parental assistance evident in their construction. Teachers moved between displays, clipboards in hand, while parents stood proudly beside their children or mingled with other adults. Lily led them confidently to her assigned table, immediately setting up her project with the methodical care of someone who had practiced multiple times. Her display featured a working model demonstrating hydrogen fuel extraction from water, with clear diagrams explaining the process and its potential applications for vehicles. "This is impressive work, Lily," Catherine said, genuinely amazed by the sophistication of the project. "Did you build this model yourself?" "Dad helped with the electrical parts," Lily explained, adjusting the positioning of a small solar panel. "But I did the research and designed the setup." Mike squeezed his daughter's shoulder gently. The concept was all hers. She's been fascinated by hydrogen power since that documentary series we watched last winter. As other students and parents began to arrive, Catherine noticed several curious glances directed their way. An unfamiliar face in a small town was always noticeable, but something in the way people looked between her and Mike suggested they were drawing conclusions about her presence at their side during what was clearly a family event. A woman in a floral dress approached them, her smile warm, but her eyes curious. "Mike Reynolds, you've been holding out on us. You didn't mention you had company in town." "Carol," Mike nodded politely. "This is Catherine Reiter, a friend whose car broke down near town. She's staying with us while I repair it." "How fortunate that Mike was there to help," Carol said, her expression suggesting she found the situation more than a little interesting. "We don't get many visitors in Riverbrook, especially not ones who," she gave Catherine's designer outfit a once-over, "clearly come from the big city. I've been enjoying the change of pace," Catherine replied diplomatically, "and learning a lot about alternative fuel sources thanks to Lily's excellent project." Carol seemed about to say more when the principal announced that judging would begin in 5 minutes, sending parents scurrying back to their children's stations. Mike exhaled as Carol moved away. "Sorry about that," he murmured to Catherine, "small towns and all." "No need to apologize," Catherine assured him. "I think it's nice that people look out for each other here, even if it comes with a side of curiosity." As the judges made their rounds, Catherine stepped back to give Lily space for her presentation, but remained close enough to offer an encouraging smile. She watched as the young girl explained her project with surprising clarity and confidence. fielding questions thoughtfully and demonstrating her model with steady hands. "She's remarkable," Catherine said quietly to Mike as they observed from a short distance. "You've done an amazing job raising her." "I wish I could take the credit," Mike replied, his eyes never leaving his daughter. "But that's all her. Sometimes I think she's raising me as much as I'm raising her." The science fair continued through the morning, with Lily's project drawing considerable attention not just from judges, but from other students and parents. When the awards were finally announced, Lily received an honorable mention in the innovation category, not the top prize she'd hoped for, but significant recognition nonetheless. "You did wonderfully," Catherine told her as they packed up the project afterward. "That judge with the bow tie kept coming back to look at your hydrogen extraction process. I think you really impressed him." Lily beamed, her earlier disappointment already fading. "Really? Mr. Harmon is a real scientist. Dad says he used to work for NASA before he retired here." "Then his opinion counts for a lot," Catherine nodded. "Seriously, scientists don't give praise unless it's earned." As they loaded the project back into Mike's truck, the principal approached them, hand extended. "Mr. Reynolds, always good to see parental support at these events." He turned to Catherine with interest. "And you must be Lily's aunt?" "Family friend," Catherine supplied smoothly, shaking his hand. "Catherine Wright." "Ms. Wright was very impressed with our science program," Mike added, "especially the emphasis on practical applications." The principal straightened slightly with pride. "We do our best with limited resources. Our STEM budget isn't what we'd like, but the teachers are passionate." "Limited resources often inspire creative solutions," Catherine remarked, "though I imagine additional funding for equipment wouldn't hurt." "That's putting it mildly," the principal chuckled. "We've been fundraising for a proper computer lab for 3 years now." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. "I work with several educational foundations. Perhaps I could put you in touch with someone who might be interested in supporting rural STEM programs." The principal's eyes widened slightly. "That would be remarkable, Ms. Wright, truly." After exchanging contact information with the increasingly curious principal, they finally headed back to the truck. Lily, exhausted but satisfied with her science fair experience, leaned against her father as they walked. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" she asked hopefully. "Honorable mention deserves at least a double scoop, right?" Mike laughed. "I think that's fair. What do you say, Catherine? Up for some of May's homemade ice cream? Best in the county." "I wouldn't miss it," Catherine smiled, finding herself genuinely looking forward to this simple pleasure rather than viewing it as an obligation to be polite. May's Diner sat on the corner of Main Street, its retro 1950s decor more authentic than nostalgic, having simply never been updated. The bell above the door jingled as they entered, and several patrons looked up, nodding familiar greetings to Mike and Lily while regarding Catherine with undisguised curiosity. "Mike Reynolds, twice in 1 week," called a woman from behind the counter, her grey hair pulled back in a neat bun, her smile revealing deep laugh lines. "Must be a special occasion." "Lily got honorable mention at the science fair, May," Mike explained, guiding them to a booth by the window. "We're celebrating." "Well now, that certainly calls for the special treatment," May beamed, coming around the counter with menus. She gave Catherine an appraising look. "And who might this lovely lady be?" "Catherine Wright," Catherine introduced herself, extending her hand. "I'm visiting briefly while Mike repairs my car." May's handshake was warm and firm. "Any friend of the Reynolds is welcome at my table. Now what's everyone having? The celebrant gets to order first, of course." Lily didn't hesitate. "Chocolate fudge sundae with extra whipped cream, please." "Coming right up," May winked. "And for the adults?" Mike ordered a simple vanilla shake, while Catherine opted for coffee ice cream, after May assured her it was her personal specialty. As May bustled away, Mike leaned back in the booth, looking more relaxed than Catherine had yet seen him. May's been running this place since before I was born, he explained. She used to give me free milkshakes when I came in after school looking particularly hungry. Never mentioned it to anyone, just slid them across the counter like it was the most normal thing in the world. People here really look out for each other, Catherine observed, not for the first time. We have to, Mike said simply. There's no safety net otherwise. Their conversation was interrupted as May returned with their ice cream orders, each serving generous beyond what Catherine was accustomed to in city establishments. Lily immediately dug into her sundae with the single-minded focus of a child, granted their heart's desire. So, Ms. Wright, May said, lingering at their table, what do you think of our little town so far? It's charming, Catherine replied, honestly, and surprisingly vibrant. I've been impressed by the sense of community. May nodded approvingly. We may not have fancy shopping malls or five-star restaurants, but we've got something money can't buy. People who care, Catherine said softly, understanding completely. Exactly that, May smiled, though a little more economic activity wouldn't hurt. The mill closing hit us hard, and we never quite recovered. Mike nodded soberly. Too many young people leaving for jobs in the cities. Hard to sustain local businesses when your customer base keeps shrinking. Catherine listened thoughtfully, her CEO mind automatically analyzing the economic situation while her heart responded to the human element. Has there been any interest from new industries? With remote work becoming more common, rural communities sometimes attract technology companies looking for lower overhead. May laughed. Honey, we barely have reliable internet, let alone whatever else those tech types require. The town council's been trying to attract investment for years, but we're too small to interest the big companies and too far from highways to appeal to manufacturers. Before Catherine could respond, the bell above the door jingled again, and an older man in overalls entered, making straight for their table. Mike! Heard you towed in some fancy city car yesterday. Please tell me you've got time to look at my tractor before you get tied up with that. Planting season's coming fast. Mike smiled apologetically at Catherine before addressing the man. I'll get to it Monday, Hank. Promise. Miss Wright's car needs parts that won't arrive until this afternoon anyway. Hank turned his attention to Catherine, eyeing her with the frank curiosity of someone unused to social pretense. That your Hemsworth executive out front of Miller's? Must have cost a pretty penny. Don't see many of those around here. It's a company car, Catherine replied smoothly, which wasn't entirely untrue. Must be some company. Hank whistled low. Shame about the water pump, though. Those new models, everything's computerized and complicated. In my day, you could fix most car troubles with a wrench and some elbow grease. The principles haven't changed as much as you might think, Catherine found herself saying. Modern engines are still internal combustion at their core, just with additional systems for efficiency and emissions control. Hank's bushy eyebrows rose in surprise. You know about engines, ma'am? A little, Catherine smiled, catching Mike's amused glance. My grandfather insisted I learn the basics before I was allowed to drive. Smart man? Your grandfather? Hank nodded approvingly. Wish more young folks understood what's under the hood these days. After Hank departed with another reminder about his tractor, they finished their ice cream in companionable conversation, with Lily excitedly recounting her favorite moments from the science fair. Catherine found herself genuinely engaged, offering encouraging comments and asking questions that prompted Lily to elaborate on her ideas. As they left the diner, the afternoon sun bathed Main Street in golden light, highlighting both its charm and its signs of economic struggle. The vacant storefronts, the faded awnings, the closing sale sign in the window of what appeared to be a long-time local bookstore. The town's been hit hard, Mike said quietly, following Catherine's gaze. When the paper mill closed 10 years ago, It took nearly 300 jobs with it. Nothing's come along to replace them. Catherine nodded, her mind turning over possibilities. It's a common story in small towns across America. The traditional industries leave, and without infrastructure investment, new ones struggle to take root. Exactly, Mike agreed. It's a chicken and egg problem. We need businesses to justify infrastructure improvements, but we need better infrastructure to attract businesses. They walked slowly down Main Street, Lily skipping ahead to peer into shop windows. Catherine noticed how many people greeted Mike by name, often stopping to chat briefly or ask when he might be able to look at their vehicles. He was clearly a central figure in the community, someone people relied on for more than just auto repairs. Your garage seems to be the busiest business in town, Catherine observed. Mike shrugged modestly. Cars break down whether the economy's good or bad, and since the dealership in Westfield closed, I'm the only certified mechanic within 40 miles. That's a lot of responsibility, Catherine said thoughtfully. It's a living, Mike replied simply, though sometimes I wonder how much longer I can keep up. Parts get more expensive every year, and people around here can't afford to pay what the work is actually worth. He glanced at her. Not that I'd ever charge them more. They're neighbors, not just customers. Catherine was quiet for a moment, struck by the contrast between Mike's approach to business and what she encountered in corporate boardrooms. At Hemsworth Motors, customers were market segments and demographics, not individuals with lives and struggles. When was the last time her company had made a decision based on what people needed, rather than what would maximize shareholder value? They were approaching Miller's Auto Repair when Mike's phone rang. He answered, his expression growing increasingly concerned as he listened. I understand. Yes, of course. I'll be there in 15 minutes, Mrs. Henderson. Don't worry. He hung up with a sigh. Emergency call. Mrs. Henderson's car died at the grocery store, and she's got frozen food melting in the trunk. Nay, go, Catherine said immediately. We'll be fine here. Mike hesitated. I hate to leave you both just standing around the garage. Dad, Lily said seriously, Ms. Catherine and I can handle ourselves for an hour. I can show her my homework, Spot and my duck drawings. Mike smiled gratefully. All right, but call if you need anything. I shouldn't be more than an hour. He glanced at Catherine. The delivery driver should be bringing your water pump around 4. I've got the paperwork already on the desk. After Mike left in the tow truck, Catherine followed Lily into the garage office. The girl immediately settled at her small desk, pulling out a folder of drawings that she clearly wanted to share. Catherine sat beside her, genuinely interested in the child's perspective. These are all the ducks from the pond behind our house, Lily explained, spreading out surprisingly detailed sketches. I've been watching them for 3 years, so I know all their personalities. Do they have personalities? Catherine asked, charmed by the concept. Of course, Lily replied matter-of-factly. Gertrude is bossy. Herbert is shy but brave when it matters. And Penelope is always trying new things first. She pointed to each duck in turn. Dad says understanding personalities is important whether you're dealing with people or animals. Your dad is very wise, Catherine said sincerely. Lily nodded solemnly. He teaches me important stuff, not just school stuff, but life stuff. She looked up at Catherine with surprising directness. He gets sad sometimes, though, when he thinks I'm not looking. Catherine felt a tightness in her chest at the child's perceptiveness. I think everyone gets sad sometimes, especially when they miss someone they love. He misses Mom, Lily agreed. But I think he's also sad about his car designs. He works on them at night when he thinks I'm sleeping, but then he just puts them away in the basement. Why do you think that makes him sad? Catherine asked gently. Lily considered this seriously. Because he made something good, but nobody gets to see it. She looked up at Catherine. That's why I always show my drawings to people. Dad says good things are meant to be shared. Your dad is right about that too, Catherine said, an idea beginning to form in her mind. The afternoon passed quickly, with Lily showing Catherine around the garage, explaining her father's organization system with proprietary pride. Catherine listened attentively, increasingly impressed by both Mike's efficient operation and Lily's understanding of it. When the delivery driver arrived with the water pump for Catherine's car, she signed for it without hesitation, placing it carefully on Mike's workbench. As she turned back toward the office, her phone, which had finally regained service that morning, buzzed with an incoming call. The number displayed belonged to Charles Davenport, her COO. With a sigh, Catherine answered. "Hello, Charles." "Catherine." His voice was tight with controlled frustration. "What exactly is going on?" "The board is in an uproar. Your mysterious disappearance, followed by this cryptic message about being stranded in some backwater town." "I had car trouble," Catherine replied calmly. "It's being repaired." "Car trouble," Charles repeated skeptically, "and this required 48 hours of being incommunicado because—" Catherine glanced around the garage, at the worn but well-maintained tools, at Lily's drawings pinned carefully to the office wall, at the ledger open on the desk, with its methodical tracking of every penny earned and spent. Suddenly, the corporate politics Charles represented seemed very far away and oddly meaningless. "Because sometimes," she said slowly, "you need to step away to see things clearly." "What things?" Charles demanded. "Catherine, the Q2 projections are concerning. The new model launch is behind schedule, and the board is questioning your commitment after this stunt." "My commitment?" Catherine interrupted, a new firmness in her voice. "I have given everything to Hemsworth Motors for the past 3 years, Charles. Every waking hour, every ounce of energy. And what have we accomplished? Higher stock prices, but lower quality ratings. Increased executive bonuses, but decreased innovation." There was silence on the other end of the line before Charles spoke again, his tone more cautious. "What exactly are you saying, Catherine?" "I'm saying," she replied, watching as Lily carefully arranged her colored pencils by shade, completely absorbed in her own world, "that I'm beginning to remember why I wanted to work with cars in the first place. And it wasn't to please shareholders or outmaneuver competitors." "You're not making sense," Charles said dismissively. "Look, just get back here by Monday. We'll smooth things over with the board, blame it on exhaustion or something." "I'll be back when I've finished what I started here," Catherine said firmly. "And Charles, start reading the innovation reports from the engineering department. The ones I've been sending for months that you keep dismissing as impractical or not market ready. We're going to have a very different conversation when I return." She ended the call before he could respond, exhaling slowly as she tucked the phone away. Lily looked up curiously. Was that someone important? Catherine smiled, feeling oddly liberated. "Yes, but not nearly as important as he thinks he is." Mike returned shortly afterward, apologizing for the delay, but looking relieved to find them contentedly settled in the garage. "Mrs. Henderson's alternator finally gave out," he explained. "Got her home safe though, frozen foods intact." "Her car's really old, right?" Lily asked. "The blue one with the funny noise." "That's the one," Mike nodded. 1998 Buick. She's been saving for a replacement, but on a fixed income." He shrugged, the gesture conveying both resignation and understanding. "How many people around here are in similar situations?" Catherine asked, her mind still working through the economic realities of places like Riverbrook. Mike considered this as he washed his hands at the garage sink. "Most of the older folks, to be honest. Cars are lifelines in rural areas. No public transportation, long distances between essentials like grocery stores and medical care. But new vehicles are increasingly out of reach price-wise, and the used market's been crazy since the pandemic. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. And repair costs keep rising as vehicles become more complex. Exactly, Mike agreed, drying his hands. It's creating a real transportation crisis in communities like ours. People drive vehicles they can't afford to replace, but can barely afford to maintain. Catherine was quiet for a moment, pieces of a larger picture beginning to fall into place in her mind. What if, she began, then hesitated. What if there were vehicles specifically designed for rural communities? Simpler mechanically, easier to repair, more affordable, but still safe and relatively efficient. Mike looked at her curiously. That's basically describing cars from 20 years ago, before everything became computerized and proprietary. Not exactly. Catherine's voice grew animated. I'm thinking of modern vehicles, but engineered with accessibility in mind. Standardized parts, documented repair procedures, affordable replacement components. The anti-luxury car, Mike mused, beginning to see where she was going. Practical transportation designed to last and be maintainable rather than flashy and disposable. Exactly, Catherine's eyes lit up. Not stripped down, but intentionally simplified in the right places. Mechanical systems accessible to local mechanics, not just dealership technicians with proprietary diagnostic tools. Mike leaned against his workbench, considering the concept. It's an interesting idea, but would a major manufacturer ever go for it? There's not much profit margin in simplicity. That's the conventional wisdom, Catherine acknowledged. But what if the conventional wisdom is wrong? What if there's an untapped market of people who want vehicles that last, that can be repaired locally, that don't require financing a small fortune? Lily, who had been listening intently to their conversation, piped up, like Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Wilson and lots of people Dad helps. Mike smiled at his daughter. That's right, kiddo. Lots of folks around here would benefit from something like that. He turned back to Catherine. But it would take a brave company to buck industry trends. Everything's moving toward more technology, more proprietary systems, more planned obsolescence. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. It would take a company willing to play the long game, to build customer loyalty through quality and accessibility rather than flash and status. She paused, then asked, if you could design such a vehicle from scratch, what would your priorities be? Mike didn't hesitate. Serviceability first and foremost. Design it so components can be accessed without specialized tools or removing half the engine. Standardize parts whenever possible. Make repair manuals freely available, not locked behind paywalls or dealer-only access. What about fuel efficiency? Catherine pressed, genuinely interested in his perspective. Important, but not at the expense of repairability, Mike replied. What good is saving gas if the car's computerized engine management system fails after 5 years and costs more to replace than the vehicle's worth? Catherine nodded, making mental notes. And safety. Features? Non-negotiable, Mike said firmly, but they don't all need to be computer-dependent. Good structural design, reliable mechanical systems, those save lives too. As they continued discussing the theoretical vehicle, Catherine found herself increasingly engaged, her corporate mind analyzing market potential while her designer's heart appreciated the elegant functionality Mike described. This wasn't just a business opportunity. It was a potential solution to a real problem affecting countless communities like Riverbrook. The afternoon passed quickly as they talked. Catherine sometimes jotting notes in her phone, Mike occasionally illustrating concepts with quick sketches. Lily moved between them, offering her own surprisingly insightful suggestions. It should have cup holders that don't break. her doom and observing their growing enthusiasm with obvious approval. As evening approached, Mike glanced at the new water pump sitting on his workbench. "I should probably get started on your car if you want to be mobile tomorrow." Catherine found herself surprisingly reluctant to see her vehicle repaired. "There's no rush," she said. "It's Saturday evening. The work can wait until Monday." Mike raised an eyebrow. "I thought you needed to get back to your company." "My company has survived without me for 2 days. It can manage another day or 2, Catherine replied, surprising herself with how easily she made this decision. "Besides, I'm having some interesting thoughts about potential market opportunities for rural communities. Call it market research." Mike's expression was skeptical, but amused. "Market research in Riverbrook? That's a first." Catherine smiled. "Sometimes the best insights come from unexpected places." As they locked up the garage and headed back to Mike's house, the evening sky painted the quiet streets in shades of gold and amber. The town seemed peaceful, a stark contrast to the relentless pace of Catherine's usual world. Neighbors waved from porches, children played in yards, and the air carried the scent of backyard barbecues and flowering trees. "Saturday night in Riverbrook," Mike commented as they walked, Lily skipping ahead to greet a friend across the street. "Not exactly the city nightlife you're probably used to." "It's nice," Catherine replied honestly. "Reminds me of where I grew up, before my family moved to the city." Mike looked at her with interest. "You didn't always live in the corporate world?" She shook her head. "My grandfather started Hemsworth Motors in a small town not unlike this one. We lived there until I was 12, when operations grew too big and headquarters moved to Detroit." "Do you miss it?" Mike asked. Catherine considered this, realizing she rarely thought about that chapter of her life anymore. "I do," she admitted. "There was a simplicity to it. People knew each other. They helped each other. They gossiped about each other too," Mike added with a wry smile. Catherine laughed. "True, there's always a trade-off." When they reached Mike's house, the evening routine fell into place with surprising ease. Catherine offered to help with dinner, and soon they were working side by side in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal of grilled chicken and vegetables. It struck Catherine how comfortable it felt, how natural, a stark contrast to her usual solitary takeout in her penthouse apartment. "I'm sorry it's nothing fancy," Mike said as he seasoned the chicken. "This is perfect," Catherine replied, meaning it. "Honestly, I can't remember the last time I cooked a real meal with someone. Usually it's room service or catered corporate events." "That sounds awfully lonely," Mike observed, then immediately looked apologetic. "Sorry, that was presumptuous." "But accurate," Catherine admitted quietly. "The higher I've climbed, the more isolated I've become. It's the nature of leadership, I suppose." "It doesn't have to be," Mike countered. "The best leaders I've known stay connected to the people they serve." Catherine considered this as she chopped vegetables. "My grandfather was like that. He knew every employee by name, visited the factory floor daily. I've tried to maintain that tradition, but with global operations..." She shrugged. "It becomes more symbolic than genuine." "Maybe that's part of the problem," Mike suggested carefully. "Companies grow beyond human scale, and something essential is lost in the process." Their conversation continued through dinner, Lily contributing enthusiastically to the discussion of what would make a perfect car for people in Riverbrook. Her childlike perspective frequently cut through the technical discussions with startling clarity. "It should be easy to fix but hard to break. It should last until I'm old enough to drive. It should have special places for dog leashes so they don't get caught in the door." After Lily went to bed, Mike and Catherine sat on the porch, the evening mild enough to enjoy the fresh air. Stars emerged in the darkening sky, far more visible here than in the city with its perpetual light pollution. "I've been thinking about your ideas," Mike said, breaking a comfortable silence. the rural-focused vehicle concept. It's genuinely good thinking. Thank you, Catherine replied. Coming from you, that means something. But I'm curious, he continued. Why are you interested? Hemsworth Motors makes luxury vehicles. Your profit margins depend on premium features and brand prestige. Catherine took a moment to organize her thoughts. That's the current business model, yes, but it's not sustainable in the long term. The luxury market is becoming oversaturated, and middle-income consumers are being priced out of new vehicles entirely. So it's about finding a new market segment? Mike asked, trying to understand. Partly, Catherine acknowledged. But it's more than that. She gestured toward the quiet street, the modest homes with porch lights glowing in the darkness. Communities like this are the backbone of America, but the automotive industry has largely abandoned them in pursuit of higher margins. What if there's another way? What if serving these communities could also be good business? Mike studied, her face in the porch light. You really believe that? I'm starting to, she said softly. My grandfather did. He built cars for working people who needed reliable transportation, not status symbols. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that. It would be quite a pivot for a company like Hemsworth, Mike observed. Catherine nodded. It would, but sometimes a pivot is exactly what's needed, a return to fundamentals. She turned to face him more directly. Mike, your designs, the fuel injection system, the cooling innovations, they're exactly the kind of practical engineering that could make a difference in a vehicle like this. Mike shook his head slightly. They're just workshop tinkering. They're more than that, Catherine insisted. They're solutions to real problems developed by someone who understands what everyday drivers actually need. A contemplative silence fell between them, broken only by the distant calls of night birds and the occasional passing car. Catherine found herself surprisingly content in this moment, away from the constant demands of her position, simply sharing ideas with someone who understood both the technical and human aspects of automobiles. Would you show me more of Riverbrook tomorrow? She asked suddenly. I'd like to understand the community better. Mike looked surprised but pleased by the request. Sure. Sunday's pretty quiet around here, but we could take a drive around. The county might give you a better feel for rural transportation needs firsthand. I'd like that, Catherine smiled. The next morning dawned clear and bright. After a leisurely breakfast, they set out in Mike's truck, Lily eagerly playing tour guide from the middle seat. The drive took them through rolling countryside dotted with farms and small residential clusters, each with its own character and challenges. That's the nearest grocery store, Mike pointed out as they passed a modest market some 15 miles from town. And the hospital is another 20 miles beyond that. When your car is your lifeline to essential services, reliability isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Catherine observed everything with keen interest. The distances between destinations, the condition of the roads, the types of vehicles people drove. She noted how many were aging models, maintained through necessity rather than choice, and how community gathering spots often featured impromptu car discussions among locals. At a small farmer's market, they stopped to purchase fresh produce and homemade bread. Catherine found herself drawn into conversations with locals, asking questions about their transportation challenges while carefully avoiding revealing her identity. The responses were consistent. People wanted vehicles they could afford to buy, maintain, and repair locally. Jim's truck is 23 years old, Mike explained, as they drove away from the market. Still runs because he can fix most issues himself. He'd never be able to maintain a new vehicle with its proprietary systems. And when that truck finally dies, Catherine asked. Mike's expression grew serious. Then he'll struggle. The used market is expensive and nothing new is designed. for longevity and self-repair anymore. It's a real problem for communities like ours. Nay. As they continued their tour, stopping occasionally to show Catherine particular points of interest, she found herself increasingly convinced that there was both a moral imperative and a business opportunity in addressing the rural transportation gap. The people she met weren't asking for luxury or the latest technology. They wanted accessibility, reliability, and affordability. They stopped for lunch at a picnic area overlooking a river, spreading their farmers' market purchases on a weathered wooden table. The simple meal of fresh bread, local cheese, and early season berries tasted better to Catherine than any five-star restaurant she'd visited recently. "I've been thinking," she said as they ate, watching Lily feed crumbs to the brave sparrows that approached their table. "What would it take to prototype one of your engine designs, the fuel injection system, for instance?" Mike looked surprised by the question. "Professionally, access to testing facilities, engineering support, materials beyond what I can source locally. Why do you ask?" Catherine chose her words carefully. "What if those resources were available to you? Would you be interested in developing your concepts further?" Mike studied her face, beginning to sense there was more to her question than idle curiosity. "Catherine, what exactly are you suggesting?" She took a deep breath. "I'm suggesting that your designs deserve to be developed and implemented, that they could be the foundation for exactly the kind of vehicle we've been discussing, one built for communities like Riverbrook." "And how would that happen exactly?" Mike asked, his tone cautious but interested. Catherine hesitated, then decided directness was the best approach. "Through Hemsworth Motors." Mike's eyebrows rose. "I'm not following." Mike," Catherine said quietly, "I haven't been entirely honest with you. My name isn't Catherine Wright, it's Catherine Hemsworth. I'm the CEO of Hemsworth Motors." The silence that followed was profound. Mike stared at her, processing this revelation, while Lily looked between them with wide-eyed interest. "You own the car company?" Lily finally asked, breaking the tension. "I run it," Catherine corrected gently. "My family founded it." Mike leaned back, his expression unreadable. "So this whole time—" "My car really did break down," Catherine hurried to explain. "That wasn't planned, but I was already questioning our company's direction before I met you. The conversations we've had, seeing Riverbrook, understanding the real transportation challenges people face, it's clarified something I've been feeling for a long time." "Which is," Mike prompted, his voice carefully neutral. "That we've lost our way," Catherine admitted. Hemsworth Motors started as a company building reliable vehicles for working Americans. Somewhere along the line, we became obsessed with luxury, status, and quarterly profits at the expense of our founding principles. Mike was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "So this tour of Riverbrook, all the questions about rural transportation needs, this was market research for Hemsworth Motors?" "Not initially," Catherine said honestly. "It began as a genuine interest in understanding your community. But yes, it's evolved into something more." She leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Mike, I believe there's an opportunity here for Hemsworth Motors to develop a new line of vehicles specifically designed for rural America, and for your innovations to be part of that vision." Mike's expression remained guarded. "Why me? Hemsworth must have hundreds of engineers on staff." "We do," Catherine acknowledged, "but they're all trained in the same corporate mindset, the same approach to design that prioritizes features over functionality, complexity over accessibility." She gestured to him. "You think differently. You understand the real-world problems people face with their vehicles because you fix them every day. That perspective is invaluable." Lily, who had been following the conversation with remarkable attentiveness, suddenly spoke up. "Dad's designs are really good. He just doesn't have fancy computers to test them. Catherine smiled at the girl. Exactly. And Hemsworth Motors has those resources. Mike ran a hand through his hair, clearly, struggling with mixed emotions. I don't know, Catherine. Or should I say Ms. Hemsworth? This is a lot to process. I understand, Catherine said softly, and I apologize for not being upfront about my identity. It wasn't meant to deceive you. Once I realized who you thought I was, it was refreshing to be treated as just a person, not a position. Mike nodded slowly, beginning to understand. So what exactly are you proposing? Catherine took a deep breath. I'd like to offer you a consulting position with Hemsworth Motors to develop your fuel injection system and other innovations with our engineering team. You wouldn't need to relocate. Most of the work could be done remotely, with occasional visits to our development center when necessary. And the rural-focused vehicle concept? Mike asked. I want to champion it within the company, Catherine replied. Create a new division focused specifically on accessible, serviceable vehicles for markets like Riverbrook. It would be a significant shift for us, but I believe it's both the right thing to do and a sound business strategy for long-term growth. Mike was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. I'd need to think about this. It's not just about me. It's about Lily, the garage, our life here. Of course, Catherine nodded. Take all the time you need. My offer stands regardless of your decision. The picnic concluded with a new undercurrent of tension, not hostile, but contemplative. As they packed up their things and headed back to the truck, Lily tugged on her father's hand. Dad, she said quietly, Miss Catherine's car is the same one from your car magazine that you said had the engine you always wanted to work on. Mike gave his daughter a look that was both exasperated and fond. You don't miss much, do you? Lily shrugged. You always say to pay attention to details. The drive back to town was quieter than their outbound journey, each adult lost in their own thoughts. Catherine worried she had damaged the genuine connection they'd formed by revealing her identity and proposing the business arrangement so suddenly. Had she misread the situation, pushed too fast? When they arrived back at Mike's house, he turned to her with a serious expression. Lily, why don't you go check on your science project? I need to talk to Ms. Hemsworth alone for a few minutes. Lily looked between them with obvious curiosity, but nodded and headed inside without argument. Once she was gone, Mike turned to Catherine. I need to know something, he said, his voice quiet but direct. Was any of this real? The conversations? The interest in my designs? The connection with Lily? Was it all just a CEO scouting talent and market opportunities? The question stung, but Catherine understood why he needed to ask it. No, she replied firmly, none of this was planned or calculated. My car breaking down here was chance. Getting to know you and Lily was unexpected, but it's been the most real experience I've had in years. She met his eyes directly. I wasn't pretending to enjoy your company or appreciate your insights. Those feelings are genuine. Mike studied her face, seeming to weigh her sincerity. And if I say no to your offer, if I decide I'm content being just a small-town mechanic, then I'll respect that completely, Catherine said without hesitation. My offer comes with no strings attached, but I hope we can remain. She paused, searching for the right word. Friends, Mike suggested, a hint of his usual warmth returning to his expression. Catherine smiled, relieved. Yes, friends. Mike nodded slowly. I'll think about your offer, seriously think about it. But I need to consider what's best for Lily and for the community that depends on the garage. I understand completely, Catherine assured him. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that meeting you and Lily has changed my perspective in ways I never expected. You've reminded me why I fell in love with cars in the first place, not as status symbols, but as tools that connect people and enable lives." Mike's expression softened. "For what it's worth, I believe you'd make an excellent advocate for rural communities within your company. It's rare for someone in your position to truly see us." "Thank you," Catherine said quietly. "That means a lot." The remainder of the day passed in a strange limbo, not awkward, but tinged with an awareness that their brief escape from reality was coming to an end. Catherine helped Lily organize her science materials for school the next day, while Mike made a few calls to check on customers whose vehicles needed attention in the morning. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Lily looked between the adults with the direct gaze of a child who had been thinking deeply about something. "If Dad helps with your car company," she said to Catherine, "would you visit us sometimes? Like for important stuff?" Catherine smiled gently at the girl. "I'd like that very much, Lily. If your dad decides to work with us, I'd make a point of coming to Riverbrook regularly." "Good," Lily nodded decisively. "Because you're different when you're here." "Different?" Catherine asked, curious about the child's perception. "Happier," Lily said simply. "Your eyes look different than when we found you. Less sad." Catherine felt her throat tighten at the observation. "You're very perceptive, Lily. And you're right. I am happier here." Mike watched this exchange with a thoughtful expression, saying nothing but taking in the genuine connection that had formed between his daughter and this unexpected visitor to their lives. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Catherine found Mike in his workshop, reviewing the sketches they'd discussed over the past few days. She approached cautiously, not wanting to intrude on his contemplation. "May I join you?" she asked from the doorway. Mike looked up and nodded, gesturing to the stool beside his workbench. "Just reviewing some of these ideas with fresh eyes." Catherine sat beside him, careful to maintain a respectful distance. And I'm seeing both the potential and the challenges more clearly," he admitted. "These designs could make a difference for a lot of people if implemented on a larger scale, but there's a big leap from workshop concepts to production vehicles." "That's why collaboration is so important," Catherine said. "Your practical understanding combined with our technical resources." Mike nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about your offer. It's tempting, I won't deny that. The chance to see these ideas realized, to potentially help communities like Riverbrook across the country." "But," Catherine prompted gently, sensing his hesitation, "but I'm a mechanic, not a corporate engineer. I speak plainly, I challenge assumptions, and I prioritize function over profit. That doesn't always translate well in corporate environments." Catherine smiled. "That's exactly why Hemsworth Motors needs your perspective. We have plenty of engineers who understand spreadsheets and shareholder expectations. What we lack are voices connected to the real world of vehicle ownership and maintenance." Mike considered this. If, and it's still a big if, I were to accept, how would it work practically? "I can't abandon the garage. People here depend on it." "We could start with a part-time consulting arrangement," Catherine suggested. "You'd maintain the garage while collaborating remotely with our engineering team. We'd provide the necessary equipment for testing and communication. As for the prototype development, we could potentially set up a small satellite facility here in Riverbrook." "Here?" Mike looked surprised. "Why would Hemsworth Motors invest in a facility in Riverbrook?" "Why not?" Catherine countered. "Rural communities offer lower operating costs, available workforce, and most importantly, the exact testing environment these vehicles would ultimately serve. It could be a win-win, economic opportunity for Riverbrook and authentic development. Conditions for Hemsworth." Mike sat back, clearly intrigued by the concept. "That's actually a compelling idea. It would bring jobs to the area, potentially help revitalize the town." "Exactly. Catherine nodded, warming to the vision herself. And it would demonstrate our commitment to rural communities, not just through our products, but through our presence. They continued discussing possibilities late into the evening, their earlier tension gradually giving way to shared enthusiasm for what might be possible. When they finally headed upstairs, both exhausted but energized, Mike paused. At the top of the stairs. "Catherine," he said quietly, using her real name for the first time, "I need you to know that whatever I decide about the professional opportunity, I'm glad your car broke down on that highway." Catherine smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "So am I, Mike. More than I can express." The following morning brought a shift in atmosphere, a Monday reality intruding on their weekend bubble. Mike needed to open the garage early for scheduled appointments, and Catherine had a growing list of missed calls and messages requiring her attention. Over a hurried breakfast, they negotiated the day's logistics. Mike would complete the repair on Catherine's car by afternoon, allowing her to return to the city if she chose. Catherine would make necessary calls to her office, beginning the process of explaining her extended absence and her evolving vision for the company's future. "Will you leave today?" Lily asked as she packed her school bag, her voice carefully neutral but her eyes betraying her hope for a negative answer. Catherine hesitated. "I should get back to the office soon, but perhaps not immediately. There are still some details to discuss with your dad." Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. "Good. Because you haven't seen the duck pond yet, and that's the best part of Riverbrook." "Then I definitely can't leave without seeing it," Catherine smiled, touched by the child's desire to share something special with her. After Mike and Lily left for the day, him to the garage, her to school, Catherine found herself alone in their home for the first time. She wandered through the modest rooms, noticing details she'd missed before. Family photos showing a younger Mike with Lily as a toddler and a beautiful woman with Lily's eyes, clearly Sarah. Bookshelves filled with an eclectic mix of repair manuals, children's literature, and engineering textbooks. The small touches that made a house a home, handmade crafts, comfortable worn furniture, plants thriving on windowsills. It struck her how different this was from her own sterile penthouse with its designer furniture and curated art, chosen more for impression than connection. This home told the story of the people who lived in it, their interests, their history, their love for each other. When was the last time she'd created a space that truly reflected her rather than her position? With a sigh, Catherine settled at the kitchen table and began making calls. Her assistant was relieved to hear from her, though clearly stressed by the chaos her absence had created. The board chairman was less pleased, his terse responses indicating the political damage control she would face upon her return. Charles was openly hostile. 48 hours has become 72, Catherine. The rumors are flying. Some are suggesting this is a prelude to your resignation. "I'm not resigning," Catherine replied firmly. "Quite the opposite. I'm clarifying our path forward." "What does that mean?" he demanded. "It means I'll explain everything when I return," she said, unwilling to outline her emerging vision for the company while sitting in Mike's kitchen, her thoughts still forming. "For now, please focus on the quarterly reports and ensure the engineering department has the updated projections I requested last week." After completing her most urgent calls, Catherine turned her attention to research. Using Mike's home internet connection, she began gathering data on rural transportation challenges, the increasing cost of vehicle ownership, and the growing disparity between automotive technologies and repair accessibility. The picture that emerged confirmed her instincts. There was a significant unaddressed market of rural and working-class consumers being progressively abandoned by an industry focused on luxury features and planned obsolescence. Moreover, this market aligned perfectly with Hemsworth Motors' original mission: quality transportation for everyday Americans. By the time early afternoon arrived, Catherine had compiled enough preliminary research to justify a serious exploration of her rural vehicle concept with the board. She had also drafted the outline of a potential satellite development facility in Riverbrook, complete with initial budget projections and potential local economic impact. She was deep in concentration when her phone rang, displaying Mike's number. "Catherine," he said when she answered, his voice strangely tight. "Could you come down to the garage? There's something you should see." "Is everything okay?" she asked, concerned by his tone. "Yes, just, can you come now? Bring your laptop if you have it." Catherine arrived at Miller's Auto Repair 20. Minutes later, laptop tucked under her arm. The garage door was open, but there was no sign of Mike in the service bay. His pickup truck sat outside, alongside two other vehicles she recognized as belonging to regular customers he'd mentioned. "Mike!" she called, stepping into the garage. "Back office," came his reply. She made her way through the shop, noticing her Hemsworth executive, now positioned on the lift, its hood open, the new water pump clearly installed. The repair was complete. She could leave any time. The thought filled her with unexpected reluctance. In the small office, she found Mike, seated at his desk, staring intently at his ancient desktop computer. Lily's school principal and three other people Catherine recognized from around town stood behind him, all wearing expressions of stunned disbelief. "What's going on?" she asked, setting her laptop down. Mike looked up, his eyes bright with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Remember how you mentioned a satellite facility might help revitalize the town?" He gestured to the screen. "Well, someone else had a similar idea." He turned the monitor so she could see an email displayed on screen, the Hemsworth Motors corporate logo prominently at the top. Catherine moved closer to read it, her breath catching as she scanned the contents. It was an official communication from Hemsworth Motors Community Investment Division, sent to the Riverbrook Town Council. The letter outlined a proposal to establish a rural innovation center focused on developing accessible transportation solutions for non-urban markets, creating approximately 50 local jobs ranging from engineering positions to testing and administrative roles. "This came an hour ago," Mike explained. "Principal Harmon received a similar communication about establishing a technical education partnership with the high school." Catherine stared at the letter in confusion. "I didn't authorize this." "You didn't?" Mike looked equally confused now. "No." Catherine shook her head, pulling out her phone to make a call. "Mark," she said when her assistant answered, "did someone from Community Investment send a proposal to Riverbrook about a rural innovation center?" "Yes, Ms. Hemsworth," Mark replied, sounding puzzled by her question. "The executive committee expedited approval this morning based on your rural initiative directive." "Oh, what rural initiative directive?" There was a pause on the line. "The one you sent last night, ma'am, the detailed proposal with preliminary budget projections and market analysis. It was quite comprehensive." Catherine's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Mark, I never sent..." She stopped mid-sentence as Lily entered the office, backpack slung over one shoulder, a triumphant smile on her face. "Lily," Mike said slowly, recognizing his daughter's expression all too well. "What did you do?" The girl shrugged, the picture of innocent mischief. "I might have sent Ms. Catherine's presentation to her company last night, in from her laptop, while you were both in the basement." Catherine stared at the child in astonishment. "You sent my draft proposal to the executive committee. How did you even access my email?" "Your password was on a sticky note under your computer," Lily explained matter-of-factly, "and you left everything open on the kitchen table. I just pressed send." "Doom." Mike closed his eyes briefly, looking both mortified and impressed. "Lily Reynolds, we have talked about boundaries and privacy." "But Dad," Lily protested, "you always say good ideas are meant to be shared. And you both kept talking about helping the town, but not actually doing anything." Catherine found herself speechless, caught between professional horror at the security breach and reluctant admiration for the child's initiative. On the phone, Mark waited patiently for instructions. "Mark," Catherine finally said, "tell the executive committee I'll brief them fully when I return. In the meantime, hold any further communications about the Riverbrook project until we speak." She ended the call and turned to the room full of expectant faces. "I apologize for the confusion," she addressed the townspeople. "It seems my preliminary research was prematurely shared." Principal Harmon stepped forward. "Does this mean there is no innovation center coming to Riverbrook? Because I have to say, Ms. Hemsworth, this opportunity could transform our community's future." Catherine looked from the principal to Mike, then to Lily, whose expression had shifted from triumph to worry that she might have ruined something important. In that moment, Catherine made a decision that felt both impulsive and absolutely right. "The proposal is real," she said firmly. "The timing was unplanned, but the concept is solid. Hemsworth Motors is exploring the establishment of a rural innovation center focused on developing accessible, serviceable vehicles for communities like Riverbrook." The small group of townspeople exchanged looks of cautious excitement. "However," Catherine continued, "the project would require local support, a suitable facility, community partnership, qualified local talent willing to train or retrain. No, the old mill property," offered a woman Catherine recognized as the town council president. "It's been sitting empty for a decade, but the infrastructure is sound. The town owns it now after the tax foreclosure." "And we have skilled people," added an older man. "Machinists, electricians, fabricators who've been commuting 2 hours each way to the factories in Westfield. They'd jump at the chance to work locally again." As the conversation continued, ideas flowing freely, Catherine watched Mike. He remained quiet, observing the excitement building around him. She moved to stand beside him. "I didn't plan this," she said softly. "But maybe Lily did us a favor." "By hacking into your corporate email?" Mike raised an eyebrow, though his tone held more amusement than anger now. "By pushing us past the talking stage," Catherine clarified. "Mike, the more I think about it, the more right this feels. Hemsworth Motors began in a community just like this one. Maybe returning to those roots is exactly what the company needs." Mike studied her face. "And what about what you need, Catherine?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "I saw how you came alive these past few days," he said quietly. "Not just talking about cars or business strategies, but connecting with people, with Lily, with..." He hesitated. "With me. Would establishing a facility here be about Hemsworth Motors, or about finding a way to keep that connection?" Catherine considered this, appreciating his directness. "Maybe both," she admitted. "Is that wrong?" Mike shook his head. "No, it's honest, and I prefer honest complications to convenient simplifications." Their conversation was interrupted as Principal Harmon approached. "Ms. Hemsworth, the town council members are suggesting an immediate meeting to discuss possible next steps. Would you be available this evening?" Catherine glanced at her repaired car, then back to Mike. A decision point had arrived sooner than expected. "Yes," she said, "I'm available, but I'd like Mr. Reynolds to join us, as his technical expertise would be invaluable to the discussion." After the impromptu gathering dispersed, Mike turned to Lily with a stern expression. "You and I need to have a serious conversation about privacy and appropriate use of other people's computers." Lily nodded, properly contrite. I know, I'm sorry. But Ms. Catherine's car is fixed now, and I was afraid she'd leave and everything would go back to how it was before. Mike's expression softened slightly. And how was it before? Quieter, Lily said simply. Your eyes didn't have the happy crinkles as much. Catherine felt warmth spread through her chest at the child's observation. Lily, she said gently, what you did was wrong. But I understand why you did it. Sometimes adults move too slowly on things that matter. So you're not mad? Lily asked hopefully. Oh, I'm definitely having a stern conversation with my IT department about password security. Catherine smiled wryly. But no, I'm not mad at you. Later that evening, as the meeting with town officials concluded, Catherine found herself standing outside Town Hall beneath a star-filled sky, exhilarated by the positive energy and practical ideas that had emerged from the discussion. Mike joined her, hands in his pockets, his expression thoughtful. It could work, he said. The logistics are sound, the community support is there, and the business case is compelling. He paused. But what happens when you go back to your world of board meetings and shareholder expectations? Will this still seem as important 6 months from now? Catherine turned to face him. That's why I need you as part of this, Mike. Not just for your technical expertise, but to keep it grounded in what matters. Real solutions for real people. Is that a formal job offer, Ms. Hemsworth? He asked, a slight smile playing at his lips. It is, she nodded. Director of Rural Innovation at Hemsworth Motors, based here in Riverbrook. You'd maintain ownership of your garage while helping shape our new division from the ground up. Mike was quiet for a moment. And would this position involve regular meetings with the CEO? Absolutely, Catherine replied, her tone professional though her eyes conveyed more. The CEO is personally invested in this initiative's success. Then I accept, Mike said simply, on one condition, which is that the CEO remembers to join us for Sunday dinner at least twice a month, Lily's orders. Catherine felt something shift inside her, a piece falling into place that she hadn't known was missing. I think the CEO would enjoy that very much. As they walked back toward Mike's truck, their shoulders occasionally brushing, Catherine looked up at the vast expanse of stars visible from this small town where fate had stranded her just 3 days ago. You know, she said softly, my grandfather had a saying about Hemsworth Motors. He said, we don't just build cars, we build the freedom to go wherever life takes you. Mike smiled. Wise man, your grandfather. He was, Catherine agreed. I wonder what he'd think about all this. About Hemsworth Motors returning to its roots, building vehicles for working communities again? Mike considered this. I think he'd be proud. And about his granddaughter finding herself stranded on a highway only to discover a new direction for both her company and herself. Mike's hand found hers in the darkness, his touch warm and reassuring. I think he'd call that the best kind of journey, the unexpected one that leads you exactly where you need to be. Catherine's fingers interlaced with his as they continued walking beneath the stars. No longer CEO and mechanic, but simply two people who had found each other on an unplanned detour that was beginning to feel remarkably like the main road. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.